welcome Dean Kilby, the founder and scientific director of Simpler Health. Educated in biochemistry and biology and studied molecular medicine. Now is the best time to be in medicine with the changes and everything that's exciting that's happening. Thank you for joining us, Dean.
My pleasure. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Look, I'm so pleased to have you here. And like I was saying, there's just so much going on in this industry right now. And it's really, for me, I think it's an exciting time to be a part of it, and the growth and the opportunities and the tech. But I'd love to hear, what are you working on right now that's, amazing? You've got a huge year ahead of you.
I do. I tend to follow the things that are of particular interest to me. So I created Simpler Health predominantly to impact metabolic health. So we have this epidemic of increasing weight and type 2 diabetes, so the obesity and diabetes epidemic. So something needs to be done about that. And, for the few people that we get to interact with and help, we seem to be making a difference there. But, when people get themselves into that state, it is detrimental to, other biological processes in their body. So it causes a lot of inflammation and tissue degradation. And so how do you help those issues, particularly, you take pain conditions, osteoarthritis, which is the leading cause of pain and disability in Australia. So I've been involved in a lot of regenerative medicine for a number of years and the use of stem cell therapies. So that's another interest area of mine. And then, obviously the pandemic, what could I contribute to? Locking down is easy. How do we unlock? How do we open up? How do we continue to live inside of this new normal, et cetera? So one of my background areas of scientific training was in molecular virology. So I studied emerging infectious diseases and in fact, a bat-derived virus called Hendra virus. And my supervisor back then, he's gone on to become arguably the world's leading coronavirus expert. They call him the Batman. So he's in Singapore. So I've been working with him throughout the pandemic, seeing, what we can contribute and looking at ways of detecting and measuring functional immunity against COVID. So that'll become more and more relevant as time goes on, specifically in the more vulnerable populations and environments like aged care facilities, et cetera. So a few different areas. And then more recently, I'm looking at new infrastructure development overseas and developing immunotherapy or immunocell therapy approaches for cancer treatment. So
you are very busy. When you were studying viral and understanding all that side of things, obviously I don't know all the terminology for it, but did you foresee or know, do they teach you this pandemic or something like this will happen and this is why you need to know this? Or is it something that was a complete shock to everybody?
No, it wasn't a shock to those who study the stuff. So we knew it was just a matter of when it would happen. And, if you look at air travel in 2019, it's the greatest it's ever been in the history of, humanity. So farming practices increase, the climate's changing. There's, it's estimated about 400,000 spillover events from bats to humans every year in just Southeast Asia. So it was only a matter of time when one of these pathogens was going to take hold. But we knew something like this was going to happen. It was well documented and published. But I remember moving to Sydney. So I did my biotech degree down in Geelong in Victoria at the Australian Animal Health Laboratories, which is the largest infectious disease laboratory in the world.
Wow, that's good to know. Well, maybe not.
Stay
away from there.
hidden away in Geelong. But, I moved from there to Sydney and I remember presenting at a leading Australian hospital here in Sydney and talking about emerging infectious diseases and the requirement for increased biosecurity. And I was told, at the end of that presentation, not to even think about that stuff. It's of no concern. It's never going to happen. Just focus on cancer research. So,
Yeah, wow. Isn't that
life happens?
Yeah, look, and it is true. I guess people don't take things on board until they can see it. And I guess that's one of the things that I feel came out of the pandemic is a lot of things that a lot of people didn't believe would happen or could happen on the tech side of things. You know, like grandmas use Zoom now and QR codes. You know, no one ever dreamed of that. And why would we need to teach them? And now it's like part of life. And I think a lot of things have come, not obviously bad things, but definitely a lot of good things have come out of, so a lot of good things have definitely come from our learnings. And oh my gosh, you're into so many different things that I want to discuss with you. So let's talk about, I really want to get to the cancer information because I think that's really important. So let's end with that. So let's talk about the simpler, how you're helping people with their health. And it's a bit different approach to what people are most commonly hearing about in the media, because I think, you know, we're very influenced and taught by the media, not necessarily by medical practitioners such as yourself. So tell us a little bit about that, and why would someone need to hear what you know?
Well, it's not necessarily for everyone, but for those that have struggled for some time, and, you know, there's a lot of information out there, and people experience being bombarded by all different kinds of information, and you just got to sit around a dinner table in a restaurant and bring up some kind of topic around nutrition, and people are as dogmatic about that as they are religion and politics these days. So and everyone's got their thing, and you know, everyone wants to be right about their approach that they've done, and they know
different approaches work for different people, right? So they're not necessarily wrong, it just might not be right for the person that they're talking to about it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, human physiology doesn't really change that much. So everyone wants a personalized approach because everyone thinks that they're special and unique, and you are in the way of a human being. But, you know, you are not your body. You have a body. You is distinct from that body. So that body doesn't really differ much from most everybody else. So, you know, if you eat sugar, your pancreas is going to respond similarly to mine. It'll release insulin and excess insulin.
I think that's a really good point, because most people do think I can handle sugar, or I can eat more meat, or, you know, everyone does feel that it is different. But I guess that makes sense. You know, we've been given a basic medical science phenomenon that we get to live in, and obviously the main difference is the way we think. You know, that's what's probably our most unique part of us.
Well, you know, that's what's unique, but really what matters is not how we think, it's how we act. So that's all the universe responds to, is action or inaction. So in that world of performance, the universe doesn't care about your, you know, your thoughts or your well-meaning intentions or anything like that. It's what you do and don't do. So, you know, eat this, don't eat that. You know, we all get annoyed at those people who seemingly eat whatever they want and they never put weight on, and you know, but you see them when they're indulging. You don't see them, you know, continuously for the next 72 hours.
Sure.
So, you know, there's a lot of superstitions that we live in, and you know, so one of the things that I kind of started to take on, just because there was the demand for it, where people kept asking me certain questions. Dean, can you just clarify this for me? Explain this simply for me. You know, how do I make sense of this? So I just started having conversations with people and just kind of making it simple, not dumbing it down. I think we make the mistake of dumbing down complex phenomena and scientific processes and you know, using metaphors and analogies which just aren't powerful. I think what's way more powerful is actually educating people in specialized terms, what they mean, how they're networked together in specific ways to create greater meaning. And that gives people, you know, it's akin to teaching someone how to fish rather than just giving them fish. So, you know, so that's really what I was committed to, is how do I empower and enable people to be able to, you know, I might work with them for a short period of time to correct some metabolic dysfunction, but then how do I train them? How do I educate them in a way that they can be at the source of that for the rest of their life, and go die from something other than heart disease, type 2 diabetes, stroke, dementia, cancer, like go get up to something worthwhile, piss a few people off, get assassinated. That would be a great way to go. But, heart disease is so beige and boring. Everyone does that. So, you want to work with, or I like to work with big people with big lives who are up to something bigger than themselves. And, if their health is kind of a hindrance to a certain degree, and they give up the excuses and reasons and justifications, and they actually just do what it takes to restore health, vitality, clear their brain, sleep better, have more energy, make decisions faster. Who knows what might be possible in that human being's life and what they can contribute then. So
yeah, and you see it all the time. You see, big people with big lives, and often it starts with them on a health journey. You see, I guess, there's big people out there in that. So you're saying metabolic function is what you start with. Would that be right? And
it's foundational. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us, for someone that's just kind of discovering, what kind of things should I be thinking about my metabolic function, or, the people that are listening, what can they be thinking about?
Look,
what questions do they need to ask themselves?
So you got to start where you're at, and tell the truth about that. So, for men in particular, if you've got a waist circumference above 94 centimeters, you ought to do something about that. If you've got high cholesterol, high blood pressure, high blood glucose, you've got to develop a mature, workable relationship with a medical practitioner and create a relationship that's going to serve you over time. Find the one that really works for you, but you got to deal with whatever's so right now, not the thoughts that you've been telling yourself over and over and over in your head that kind of make wherever you're at okay when clearly it's not. Yeah. So that's the first thing. You got to tell the truth to yourself, and then you got to look at, it's like in business, right? You have accounting packages. You want to be on top of your cash flow, all of these distinctions in business. And, those that succeed in business have a very good grasp on these specified terms and how they're networked together to create meaning and offer distinct understanding. And then you can kind of be responsible for where you're at and design pathways forward to get to where you want to be. Most human beings, at least, here that I see and interact with, they don't put that level of intellectual effort into their own health. So
why do you think that? Like in your opinion, or what you've seen, why do we do that? And we do it, obviously. We all know cigarette smoking's bad and alcohol's bad and drugs are bad, but I would say there's a huge percentage of the population that still do it. So why do we do that?
Yeah, so because it's seemingly okay to. It's
you're not getting an immediate reaction. There's no instant, issue, right, or a problem that doesn't come. It builds over time, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah, and it becomes the norm. So
and I think that what you said about you got to tell yourself the truth, and I guess a lot of people have excuses or the story that they tell themselves as to why they're not healthy or they're overweight or whatever the problems that they're receiving. When really, we probably do deep down know what it is. But we avoid that topic because, changing something that is easy or satisfying, I guess. I don't know. What is it?
Usually people just aren't up to anything big enough that demands of them to really help keep their health in check. So, because your body is perfectly correlated to the size of the commitment that you're up to fulfilling on in any given moment in time. Okay. Right? So unless you create a bigger game, it's like this, if you tell someone, if you try really hard over the next 4 years, then we'll see if we send you to the Olympics.
Yeah.
Right. Versus, hey, you're going to the Olympics in 4 years, sort yourself out. Yeah. Right. It's very distinct and context. Right. So to create a future that's big enough, and if you're, gosh, I had this real amazing experience earlier this year, last year, sorry. So I lost my godmother in Bendigo, and she passed away at 94 years of age. So I go to her funeral, and she was a phenomenon. She was just this amazing woman. She was into politics, and, back in the early days in the 70s, I believe it was, the term ladies of leisure. Well, she was part of the Australian Labor Party, and they called them Ladies of Labor.
Ah,
And it was like this pioneering group of women who were a force to be reckoned with in the Australian political realm. And anyway, she was one of the first council members on a shire council in the Bendigo area. And anyway, she developed a reputation as the bomber. They used to call her the bomber. So if anything needed to be impacted, they would send Elaine McNamara in to go get the job done, and she got the job done. You know, she was amazing. So highly influential human being, but you know, passed away at 94, and it was amazing the number of accomplishments and things that got contributed in the last 15, maybe even like 20 years of her life. And because, you know, you can imagine all the credibility and the experience and the know-how and the wisdom that comes about at that age. And at that age, you don't give a damn.
I was going to say
what you say.
You're way more confident.
So, like, it's just amazing the amount of accomplishments and things that got contributed. And I just thought, wow, it kind of offers a whole new perspective, not just on why take certain actions to be responsible for your health span.
Yeah,
that's the number of years that you get to live healthfully, but together with longevity, total longevity, because who knows, if you can add an extra 10, 15 years to your total life length, and the majority of your life is spent in relatively good health, who knows what that entire life could contribute to, you know, what matters to you, whatever you're committed to, whether it be your family structure, your fortune, your empire, greater society, you know, you want to make a difference. Exactly, all of that.
Yeah. So, that makes beautiful sense. It's so true, because I think a lot of people are just thinking they don't want to go past that, because you do see people in that age, you know, 85, and they just think that it's not a life that they want to live. So, you know, they're not thinking about those extra 10, 15 years in the way that is possible.
No, even if you are like just about yourself, which, you know, nothing wrong with that, and people are about just their own personal, you know, self-importance and their own retirement. So there's a lot of effort spent towards sorting life out and handling life, at least financially, to a degree where you can retire comfortably. But then you retire, you're not going to live long enough, and if you do, you're not going to be living in good health. You're going to be spending a lot of that money on your ill health concerns. You won't have the energy to do what you want to do. You won't have, you know, the body and the mobility to allow you to travel where you want to travel, the way that you want to travel. I mean, I used to joke, you know, some time ago, but the more I think about it, maybe it could have some validity. I used to joke about, you know, if you're in an aged care facility and you meet all the health checks at age 85, you know, you should be able to go screw whoever you want in the village. And, you know, maybe that's incentive enough for some people, you know. They'd be eating the right foods and doing their yoga and everything every day. So
maybe that's the trick with humans. We haven't found the right incentive.
I know, right? But just whatever it is, you've got to create something that's kind of out there in the future that's big enough and compelling enough for you to be able to act responsibly as a mature, integrous adult right now. And we don't, because this thing never grew up.
Or we keep putting it off. You know, I'll wait till New Year's Eve, or I'll start on Monday, or
Exactly. There's never a right time. And like I said, step one is confronting the truth about things. And there's never a right time to confront the truth about things. And anytime I've had to confront the truth about things, which is often, it's always at the wrong time, because there's never a right time. So,
well, I guess also, you know, for those that have confronted the truth or have it in the back of their mind going, oh yeah, I kind of know what it is. But then once you say it out loud or start making steps, then, you know, if you don't continue, what does that mean? You know, does it mean, you know, does someone feel failure? Like, what do you think?
So when someone doesn't continue,
well, they know the truth, they know what they need to do, but maybe they are too scared to take the first steps and don't want to make the changes or whatever it is that they need to do in their life.
Yeah. Yeah, I
That
mean,
could
look,
be one of the
for
reasons
those
people are struggling.
most people, given the right pathway, if they knew where to take those steps, they
Mm.
would,
Mm.
they would probably take it. So,
And that's why
uh,
you help them, hold their hand, coach them.
yeah, we don't do hand holding, but we do coach them. It's and create the space that's safe enough for them to fail and keep going.
Yeah.
And usually what happens is, there's a commitment, and people have their relationship to commitment a bit muddled up. So, progress, not perfection. You're human beings. So, there will be temptations. There will be times where those brain patterns that have been in existence for some time now, for years, sometimes decades, are well-trodden paths. So, people turn to certain foods when the circumstances aren't great, when their internal state is, it's no longer serving them, and to distract themselves, to make themselves feel a little bit better, they'll go to certain foods. I call that nurture feeding.
Yeah.
As I said before, this thing didn't grow up. So I'm of the view that, we're the only mammal that continues to consume dairy after weaning. So
Not even our own dairy.
I know it's an odd phenomenon, but we do it. And but that nutrient combination in milk of sugar and fat rarely happens in nature. You rarely see carbohydrates and fat together. You see protein and fat together. You see protein and carbohydrates together. But we put carbohydrates and fat together in the form of, cheese on bread and pastries and stuff like that. So,
but then, like, I always feel that some of that is almost cultural and driven into us, and so we've been taught that, and to change that, it means almost believing in something different.
Sure. If those sort of comfort foods, then historically, over time, the more accessible those foods become, the more obviously they're going to become the norm of what we eat.
Yeah, true.
Right. And when life is occurring as a threat, and you don't have the sort of resiliency, you haven't developed a certain type of resiliency and a way of interpreting the various potential threats. They're not real, mostly.
Yeah.
They're interpreted as threats. So then you don't feel safe. Stress goes up. What do? You want to hide out. You'll binge eat alcohol, drugs, people have affairs, all types of stuff, just to distract their brains from having to deal with what's actually happening. So, like I said before, that the milk is one of the only places in nature where that nutrient combination comes together. So, and the problem was, I think, we weaned off the breast, for those who were breastfed, or the bottle, and they kept feeding us dairy and bastardizations of that, from ice cream to chocolate to savory versions like deep fried potato. So that nutrient combination becomes the place we go to when everything's a little bit overwhelming and stressful. So people call it emotional eating. It's more like nurture feeding. So, the opportunity is to take a stand for a distinct kind of human being, especially when you're our age, in your 40s. It's time to grow up.
Things get a little bit harder to do.
I know.
Have no sleep and still function the next day anymore.
Yeah, but it's really hard to learn new strategies of being and acting in life when you're metabolically unwell, because the inflammation is driven up. You got brain fog. You're not sleeping well. Your joints hurt. You're not confident in your own body. You're having to wear clothes that you don't particularly like. You're doing the best that you can with what you've got, and it's still not enough. And the more you work at it, seemingly the worse it gets. And people have had this experience of losing weight, putting it back on, losing it, and then it
and then they hit 40, it doesn't go doesn't go away again. That's it.
No. So,
but then then I often see women in their 50s that it somehow they get it. Like I don't know if it's the shortness of time that's left or what it is.
We get a lot of clients around that age bracket.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden I'm grown up now. I need to actually be serious about my health.
Yeah. So, there's a lot to it. It's not as straightforward, and it is simple.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to it, and that gets learned over time, and no one has the integrity or discipline to kind of follow the protocols that we put in front of them, and that's why we coach them along the way, and they develop that the wherewithal and the integrity and discipline to be able to sustain that result long term. And
I love you using that word discipline, because I find that's the word that, or the attribute that people struggle the most with. You know, so how do you teach someone to be disciplined?
It's a constant, it's a journey of frequent opportunities for self-forgiveness.
Okay, good.
Right? I mean, you have to. I mean, you've got to create, you've got to be able to create enough space and compassion for yourself, for the innumerable stupidities of what it is to be human. And you're always screwing up and, you know, and beating yourself up on that. So discipline is something that's developed over time. It's not something that someone arrives to me already with, right? Especially in the area of their health. So that's got to get developed over time. And to be able to do that, you got to create enough space to forgive yourself. And that act of generosity is absolutely critical, because, you know, you beat up on yourself and then it's just, you know, it's this downward spiral once again, and you'll quit, and then it becomes just the next failure to, you know, use as evidence for how much of a loser you are. And then, you know, people get to the point where it's like, you know what, you know, people just need to learn to love me the way that I am.
Yeah. But, and then I hear, like, it's no fun to, you know, not indulge yourself. Therefore, you know, you might as well indulge yourself and live a short life of indulgence rather than a long life of non-indulgence.
I know. And people say that I'm here for a good time, not a long time.
Yeah.
You know,
but that's something that's, I feel that's a cultural thing that has been driven into us from our parents or society or whatever your exposure is to that, because I hear it all the time.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. These conversations are inherited. You know, people aren't that original, you know, to come up with it themselves, right? So they're just inherited conversations, and the impact of not being sourceful around the language that we use and the conversations that we traffic in is that we remain at the effect of it, constrained, inhibited within that conversational space. And I mean, what you're pointing to is really, really powerful, because context is decisive. And although context and language are like the front and back of the hand, you know, your context is outside of language. And when I say language, I don't mean English or Japanese or Italian or anything. I mean the phenomenon language. But language is our only access to context.
Yeah.
So if you can distinguish the conversational space and the kind of language that you traffic in, it gives you an opening to create something other. And it's akin to like pulling a fish out of water. You know, fish doesn't necessarily, I don't know this for sure, but I'm just, you know, go with it. The fish doesn't necessarily know that it's swimming in water. It's just kind of being a fish, and it doesn't even know that it's doing that, right? But you pull the fish out of the water, and then it can look down and go, wow, water, right? So there's a condition, an environmental condition in which we live as human beings, and, you know, cultures are developed inside of language. I mean, language creates everything. So, you know, it's very, very powerful to get straight about that for yourself.
That's so true. And I feel like maybe for someone that's not ready to come see you, maybe that's the start. Like, what language are you using with yourself? What are you telling yourself? What words do you use? How do you describe that? Because that's actually your access to your subconscious, right?
It's very difficult. You got to do it in conversation with someone else. Like, you know, because then you just left.
No, we have conversations with ourselves all the time.
That's the problem, you know. It's just one voice. It's like, it seems like
it's right.
Seems like there's a whole committee up there, but there's not. It's just one voice. And, you know, you ask the question, whatever the question might be for you, that same voice will answer it.
Sure.
That's the problem. And, you know, why do I keep doing this? Well, because you're an idiot. And the repetition of that, it reinforces those neuronal brain patterns, and then it just becomes who you are. So you've got to create new neuronal brain patterns. So in conversation, when we coach people, and by the way, you engage a coach, whether it be in athleticism, in business, or in health or whatever, because a coach can see what you can't see.
Sure. They got the
You know,
helicopter view of you.
exactly. Left to your own devices, you've only got what you've ever had in the past.
Yeah,
So
true.
a coach can help create an opening for a pathway in which it's safe enough for you to take that next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. And, you know, before you know it, I mean, we've got a client that lost in excess of 90 kilograms.
Awesome.
Right. And this was all done over the phone, just a weekly phone call. And, you know, but that discipline, like I said, it's a little bit challenging in the beginning, but you get into a state of momentum until there's a hurdle, and then you get coached through that. I don't even mind it when people fall off the wagon, because then we can look at that situation and distinguish, okay, what happened?
Yeah.
Right. And what did you tell yourself? And, you know, where did you throw your hands up in the air and go, oh, screw it? And, you know, all of that.
What was your excuses to yourself, or what was the story that you shared to yourself that made it okay to do that?
Exactly. And then you can get all of those conversations and put them up on the table of predictability, and knowing now, okay, you can't use that anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where you develop the maturity and the responsibility to never have that stuff, you know, have its way with you again. You have it won't have you. So
I love it. I love it. No, even now I'm thinking of so many times I've been told stories as to why they can, why they can't, and yeah. Look, I'm probably I'll do some on the post when I post this out to everyone.